Hi, and welcome to my talk about using Unreal for 2D games instead of Unity. So, my name is Bala Vignesh, and I am a solo dev from Malaysia, so let me introduce myself proper. I'm a game designer and pixel artist from Malaysia, and currently I run an indie studio called One More Dream Studios. When I worked on my debut game Ageless, it was with a small team of 3 people, and it was published by Team 17. That game didn't do so hot, but I learned a lot from the experience and used that information to make my next game, Never Ending Beyond, which is an animal petting roguelite. So let's look at the trailer for that game. Alright, so there's currently a free demo of my game on Steam, and if you would like to support me, please do wishlist my game. It's called Never Ending Beyond. So why do I use Unreal, right? The main reason is Blueprints. And for those who don't know, Blueprints is a visual scripting tool that's built into Unreal itself. So you don't really have to download any new plugins or anything, it's built in. So what you do with Blueprints is you connect nodes. For example, there might be a for loop node or a print string node, or in this case on the image on the right, there's an overlap node, and when you overlap with the object, it plays a text which tells you to interact. So something simple like that. Or on the left image, it can get quite complex with a bunch of nodes here and there, but it's great for prototyping, I found. And if you're an artist or a designer, I feel like it would fit your brain a little better than if you were a pure programmer. So it's a great way for you as an artist or designer to get an understanding of how programming works, the logic, and how certain functions are made. So if someone mentions a for loop to you, you kind of know what they're doing, and you can talk to them in programming lingo once you've learned Blueprints. And over the course of development, I've learned that I've gotten a much better grasp of traditional coding thanks to the visual medium of Blueprints. Now I'm going to show you some of the behind the scenes of how a 2D game is made in Unreal. And since my game is a top-down game, I'll show you how depth works. So without depth, objects won't layer and overlap properly, because as an object moves in front and behind an object, it constantly needs to switch between being behind something and in front of something. How is that done when your 2D world is flat, right? So instead, you want to write some piece of code in Blueprints that tells the game that any object that is above another object has to be behind that object as well. So you simply connect the y-axis to the z-axis. This is how it looks like in practice. So as the objects go higher and higher in a 2D space, they also go backwards in the camera space. And this doesn't affect any collision, it only affects the visual sprite. So all the collision takes place on the single flat layer, but all the visuals are pushed back as the world goes up or down. The next insight is how Unreal handles animation. So in Unreal, animations are called flipbooks. That's all the petting animations you see here. And same as in Unity, it's done using a sprite sheet where you draw a bunch of keyframes, you put them together, and combined they become a flipbook. You can alter the play rate so it can play faster or slower. The only thing is Unreal has an animation tree. However, it's more suited for 3D models and 3D animations with the blend trees. So in order for animation tree to work in Unreal, you have to do some work to get there and get as good of an animation tree as Unity. The next insight is the tile editor. So when you're making a 2D game, a tile editor is so important. And Unreal has one, but it's very bare bones, right? It's there, but it's not as good as Unity's. However, if you are willing to do the work, you can actually go in and modify the tile editor. And I'm not a programmer. Trust me, it's not easy for me to do coding, and even I can do it. Like, just with a bit of work, you can get Unreal to be modified and work according to your own workflow. It can be quite intimidating at first, but Unreal gives you so much freedom once you learn the tools. So I built this auto tiling system all by myself, using Unreal's tile editor as a foundation. This auto tiling system is inside the game and used as a development tool to create maps. This auto tiling editor can be used by players to place objects. This auto tiling tool is used for gameplay, so players can use it to build their garden, and it's also used for development to improve my workflow when I'm drawing and designing maps for the game. The next insight is AI navigation. So if you're using Unreal for the first time and you're thinking of starting a big project, test early always. Always test your important features early, whether it be something small like movement or something big like AI navigation, or even something that you wouldn't think would cause an issue like combat, right? Test it early just in case you might run into some issue. For example, I found out that if I faced the world in a certain way, I couldn't get navigation to work. So I had to flip my whole world upside down in order for me to use Unreal's AI navigation tools. And had I done this 1 year or even a few months into development, there would be a lot of problems where I had to revert a lot of things and change a lot of math and how the movement in the game works. So luckily, I found this out early and was able to solve the issue. The next insight is lighting and shadows. So Unreal has really good lighting and really good shadows. However, because I used an orthographic camera for a 2D game, I wasn't able to take advantage of this, and I couldn't figure it out without it taking too much time off of my actual game dev schedule. So instead, I just faked the lighting and shadows by using fake clouds and fake sprites that are laid on the ground and kind of offset. It looks good enough, I think, but if I were to have more time and more, maybe for the future games, I would take full advantage of Unreal's systems, especially with the new Unreal 5, because this game is built on Unreal 4.26, so it might be easier right now to make 2D lighting in Unreal. As for plugins, I use a plugin called Pixel 2D, but only for the animation tree feature. It's quite a lot to pay for one single feature, but this plugin is quite robust and comes with a full package, but I prefer doing it on my own so that I have full control of the 2D workflow. The only thing that I needed and didn't want to waste time building on my own was an animation tree, because I did not want to waste time, and instead I figured as a business owner I could afford this amount for this feature that I really needed. It's up to you whether you want to buy a plugin or not, but I think if a couple of you want to come together and share an account to buy the plugin just to learn the workflow, that's a good idea as well. But it's quite expensive, and I would say nowadays you would not need this, to be honest. This is completely unnecessary to make a 2D game in Unreal. So of course Unreal has its own negatives. It can suck. Trust me, it's horrible when it comes to crashes. I'm randomly working on UI or something in 2D and it just, boom, engine closes, engine crashed. It does do a recovery save and it recovers most of your save files, but sometimes it can disrupt your workflow and it just gets a bit annoying after a while. I've never had a Unity crash, or even, I don't think so, but Unity doesn't crash as often as Unreal. That's definitely for sure. And the 2D features of Unreal are quite bare bones. You have to be willing to put in the work to improve what's there in order to make it work for you. There are also a lack of tutorials, but I've noticed in this year and recent months, a YouTuber by the name of Cobra Code has been coming up with a lot of great Unreal tutorials. So it's getting there. The 2D side of Unreal is getting there, and as more people make games that are 2D in Unreal, we'll get more support. So I think it's a great option for people who are thinking of making games but aren't as good or proficient in programming, or they simply are an artist that wants to do some prototyping on their own. Unreal is a great resource for that. Next, I want to talk about the Mega Grunt. So my game, my Never Ending Beyond, got a Mega Grunt for Unreal. And if you are using Unreal for your project, even your student project, you are eligible for a Mega Grunt. So it's no strings attached, free money, right? The minimum they'll give you is 15k USD, and it's a one-time payment upfront once your Mega Grunt pitch is approved, right? If it goes higher, then they'll ask for milestones and they want to keep you in check of how you're spending the money. But if it's the minimum amount, then they will not do that. Obviously, you want to finish your project, but if you're making something in Unreal, I think might as well take advantage of this that is out there. So before you make the pitch, you should ask yourself these questions. What makes your project unique, right? Why would they want to give you the money over somewhere else? Are you showcasing Unreal in a positive light? Are you showcasing something new in Unreal? For example, they didn't tell me exactly why I got the grant, but I believe it's because I used 2D in a different way, and I'm showcasing a top-down game in Unreal that it doesn't look like it's made in Unreal. So it's quite a catch when people figure that out and then they want to learn from it. So I think that's part of why I got the grant. And also, to be honest, I'm from Malaysia, and I feel like they don't send grants over here very often. So if you can take advantage of the fact that your identity is unique, then maybe your grant application will go through easier, right? And I do recommend it, even if you're a student, if you have a promising project or a promising tool that is done in Unreal. Unreal gives mega grants for games, software, education. So check it out and yeah, take advantage of what's there. So I wanted to give you some general design tips from my years of making games, right? So I made a mistake early on in Ageless where every enemy has its own unique code, and it became a complete mess when adding features and new abilities. Because in Never Ending Beyond, each animal has one passive and one weapon, and they can intermingle endlessly. There's infinite possibilities. There's no way a single person can test this and QA test every ability with each other as the features are added. So I've built the game in a way that it's very self-contained. Everything derives from a single place. So one change will change everything, and I don't need to do any copy pasting. That's very important. Any redundant work should be completely wiped out from your workflow. You don't want to be doing things, mundane things again and again if you don't have to, right? Always value the time that you could use to build the foundation of the system versus the time that you could save. So if it's worth it, I would advise taking a few months to build your prototype as solid as possible, not just to make a prototype, but to make the workflow to finish your prototype. And for example, all enemies in my game share a similar code base, even the bosses. So they derive from a parent class, and enemies are created under it, called their children. That's where the features are added, right? So for example, BP enemy is the basic class, and they might have an attack that launches an animation and tells it that it's in an action state. It also does handle, the main class handles health, damage taking, AI, navigation, spawning, all that, right? And then you create a children of that BP enemy, and let's say I want to make a bear enemy, the bear bot. Its attack is different, right? So when that initial attack is called, it calls this bear attack, which either does a leap, land, or swipe. So each child can have its own unique abilities, and when I change the parent enemy, all the children's take effect as well. So that way, everything is linked back to a single source, and it's a very efficient way of coding. So finally, you want to ask yourself, should I use Unreal or should I use Unity for 2D, right? These are basically the pros and cons recapping. So we go through them again. Unreal has its mega grants, program which gives you funding. It has blueprints if you don't like coding normally and you prefer visual scripting like me. And I feel like Unreal is reliable. For example, if I wanted to use Unity, I have to download a lot of plugins to make the 2D workflow according to what I want. But Unreal has everything built in. You might have to tweak it a little, but it starts in the engine. You don't need to download anything to add on to your engine. But Unreal can be very intimidating in terms of UI. It's quite different, it's quite scary, and there's not as many tutorials as Unity has, right? There are tutorials, but some of them are quite out of date, so you don't know if you can believe in them. And yeah, the creators for Unreal are much less popular than the creators for Unity in terms of tutorials. Unreal does crash a bunch, which is annoying. It messes with your workflow, and it's just not a fun experience. If you're doing it right, it can happen less, but when you're getting started, it can be quite a deterrent. But I say hang in there, go through the crashes, and it will be worth it. And finally, Unreal is not built for 2D. It's a 3D engine. Keep that in mind when you're working on it. Don't ask yourself why this is not working for 2D, because it's not supposed to be for 2D. If you're using Unreal for 2D, you're making a choice to fight against the tide for its benefits, which are really good. Unity has a few pros. It's built for 2D. It's made for that, definitely. It has lots of features, lots of upcoming features, and it's easy to learn. The problem is those features don't get good support. Sometimes they just stop working on the features to make new features that they can use for promotion. There's a lack of funding. They don't really support the creators in the same way that Unreal does. And their visual scripting is lackluster. There was once Bolt, and then they announced Bolt 2, and then they just deprecated it. They kicked it down and said, die Bolt, it's over for you. So I don't trust Unity with their features at all. That being said, you should choose your engine based on your game and based on you. Every engine has its positives and negatives. If I were making a orthogonal tile editor game, maybe I might go back to Unity if I didn't have my own tile editor. If I was making a side scroller, maybe Unity as well. Top-down game, I would always do in Unreal right now, and maybe a few other genres might fit Unreal better. So ask yourself these questions. Which engine has the better tools for the genre? Which engine is enjoyable for you to work with? Are you happy to wake up in the morning and work on this engine? If you look at the engine and you feel disgusted, there's no point using the engine, right? No matter how long you're gonna take, it's not gonna be a fun experience. Do you need the funding from the mega grant? If you do, it's worth taking the pain from Unreal's lack of features to get that money. You should also ask yourself, if you're not a solo dev, can your teammates accept the change to go to Unreal just for 2D? And how experienced are you with the engine, right? If you are not very experienced and you plan to make a game, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. So you got to allow yourself the time to make those mistakes. So I would say if you really want to make a 2D project in Unreal, start learning it on the side while you make your project in Unity. And if you really want to switch to Unreal, you can always do it for your next future project. Alright, so thanks for listening. That's about it for my talk. If you have any questions, you can message me on TikTok at BalaMixGames. I post educational content there, talking about pixel art, how games are made, hitboxes, and I'm going to do much more tutorials on there, like you've seen today. So if you want to support me, that's the best place to do it. Or you could wishlist a game on Steam. Wishlists are so important for game devs. So if any of you do that, I thank you wholeheartedly. But thank you everyone for listening, and that's been me.